No, that mountain there is just what they call I enjoy hiking and I like hiking around the what they call the Himalayas and certainly in Nepal. And that is one of my favorite views where we were putting up in those what they call tea houses. Okay. Let me just okay. What we will do is we'll cover the what we call topographical systems. Yeah. Uh, of Freudian theory, the conscious, pre-conscious, and unconscious. Yeah. And we will review the psychosexual development and its influence here on personality. And we will discuss Freudian structural theory, which is to do with ego and superego, and of course the deployment of defense mechanisms, and discuss a little bit about the techniques used in psychoanalysis. Yeah. Don't forget, these in mental health work, and in fact, in terms of understanding human behavior, these were the most powerful theories. Yeah. And even today, if you, no matter what program you do, yeah, you can do something on human resource or teaching or whatever, you'll find that you'll be introduced to the theories to do with understanding human behavior. And Freudian theories will always do that. So there's an expectation that all undergrads should have a what they call an understanding of it. But actually, for me, I do it as a, if you like, how should I put it, historical interest, because we have moved on away, quite away from it. But still, a lot of people subscribe to it. But I only do it as a historical, perspective, because we move from Freudian kind of theories to more behavioral and cognitive behavior in the 70s and 80s. Yeah. Okay, Sigmund Freud is, I think he was born, he lived in Vienna, yeah, born in 56. He died in England, I think, in 39, yeah. So around the war. Now, he was the first one actually to talk about levels of consciousness. Yeah, he actually theorized that a lot of our behavior is influenced by forces that we are not aware of. Yeah, and that was quite radical for that time. Yeah. Okay, and it was, if you like, it created a lot of magic and mystery about the theory because you were talking about the unconscious. Yeah, and he did it partly through work with his patients. Yeah, okay. So he proposed three levels of consciousness: the unconscious, the part that you have no access to, and then you have pre-conscious, the parts that you can actually, with some effort, gain some access to. Yeah, and of course the conscious. Yeah, when you forget and when you can't remember something, but you work it out and you find the object or whatever. Yeah, that is a sort of pre-conscious kind of area. Yeah, and when you're sleeping, yeah, you're in that area again. But these three levels of consciousness is quite important according to Freudian theory. Yeah, because he places a lot of importance. Yeah, in the unconscious. Yeah, or he emphasizes the unconscious quite a bit. The conscious part is what we are aware of. Yeah, we are aware of our environment, ourselves. We are mindful of what we do, how we do things. Yeah, they are all the conscious part. Our thoughts, our memories, our feelings. They are all conscious. Yeah, you are alive. Yeah, your sensory modalities, if you like, is taking in information from your environment. Yeah, that is that conscious part. Yeah. Freud, in a way, divided the mind into ego and superego. I'll explain this a little bit for you because this is important. You need to, in a way, read around it a bit and make sure you understand these things. Yeah, I'm underlining it for you. So please, yeah, do some reading around it. It is simply a bundle of instinct. It's what we are born with as a baby. Yeah, we are born with just urges, desires, wishes, which is usually about gratification. You want satisfaction immediately. Yeah. So if you need feeding, you will say that's what you need. You have to be fed. So you will cry. Yeah. Okay. It is a bundle of instinct. Yeah. You're born with it. It is in the unconscious, completely in the unconscious. Yeah. So as the baby develops, yeah, okay, that part of it, yeah, extends into what we call ego. Yeah. So ego is an extension of it. Yeah. As the baby develops, the baby becomes more conscious, more aware. It is the development of ego. Yeah. Okay. So it is in the unconscious. It is a bundle of instinct. It's what we call, it's governed by pleasure principle. Yeah. Anything that's pleasurable and it wants instant gratification. Yeah. Okay. So the principle governing it is referred to as pleasure principle. That's the only principle that matters. Time and space and things like that has no meaning because something that happened, in your childhood, yeah, it will be just as relevant today as far as it is concerned. Yeah. There is no sense of time. Yeah. Okay. Uh, so it will simply make demands. Yeah, it's about pleasure. It's about gratification. Yeah. Now, the ego is that part of it that faces reality. So as the child develops, as a baby, the child develops, it becomes more conscious, more aware of the environment, yeah, and of itself. Yeah. So, but the point is that here, this part is conscious, but it's extended outwards from the unconscious. Yeah. So some of ego will be in the unconscious and in the pre-conscious. Yeah. Though most of it will be in the conscious. Yeah. So ego is, if you like, an extension of it, which faces reality. And ego actually draws for its energy from it. Yeah. The energy it gets is derived from it. Yeah. Okay. Now, ego is there to serve it. Yeah. It is there to uh, help it account for reality, if you like. Yeah. You cannot always, yeah, get your gratification instantly because you have to account for reality. Yeah. Okay. So ego will find ways of putting off the demands of it. Yeah. And the gratification can take place later, but not now. Yeah, that is important. Yeah. Okay. So ego is there to serve it, but it has to take into account the reality. Yeah. Okay. So I'll come back to that, to ego again. But the superego is uh, we as we develop, as we socialize, our parental values and our parental do's and don'ts, yeah, become internalized. Yeah. So we kind of adopt, well, if you like, parental values are transmitted, yeah, to the child, yeah, through socialization. Yeah. So the do's and don'ts become internalized. So when the child is away from the parents, yeah, the parents are not there, the child will still behave as though the parents are there. Yeah. I cannot do that, or I should avoid some things. And so the superego is the values that we subscribe to, yeah, that's transmitted from our parents and other carers and adults around us. So in a way, That's the vehicle through which values are transmitted, yeah, through generations. Yeah. Okay. The family socialization. Yeah. But here, what Freud is saying is that the superego, yeah, will reflect your family's or your parents' values, and they can be sometimes very severe. Yeah. They can be very restrictive, very punitive. So the superego will reflect that. Yeah. So as an adult, you may do things or you may think things, and you may say to yourself, "That's not right. You shouldn't do that." Yeah. Okay. So you can feel guilt and you can feel a lot of discomfort when you're doing things that you believe, according to your value system, you shouldn't be doing. Yeah. Okay. But you see, the ego, in the process of trying to, respond to its demand, has to account for the superego. The superego, which can be very punitive. Yeah. Okay. So ego ends up serving another master. Yeah, it has to account for superego. Yeah, depending on how restrictive, how punitive, the ego has to account for it in responding to the demands of it. So it will say, "I want certain gratification," and the ego will say, we have to be mindful of our values and things. You cannot, yeah, and not in that way. Yeah. Okay. So the ego has to respond to the demands of superego as well, or the constraining, what they call it, role played by superego. Yeah. So the ego is actually serving it. It has to account and serve superego, yeah, which can be very restrictive and punitive. It also serves reality. Yeah. It has to account, yeah, for the demands of reality. Yeah. So in that sense, the ego is actually serving three masters. That's important. Yeah, you remember, ego's relationship with it is to as a servant, but ego has to defer some of the demands. Yeah, because of the actual reality. It has to respond to the demands of reality as well. But it also has to be mindful of the constraining effects of superego. I'll show this in this, yeah. This is put together with the levels of consciousness. Yes, you can see that it extends from the unconscious into the pre-conscious. But most of the pre-conscious, it becomes ego, basically. Yeah, as it becomes. So ego extends a little bit in the unconscious, and then it comes into the conscious. Yeah. Okay. So it's an extension from unconscious to the conscious. It's a process, but the ego becomes an entity on its own, yeah, as a separate entity from it, yeah, as it comes into the pre-conscious, yeah. And you can see the superego, because it's a social phenomena, it's a socialization, well, if you like, socialization develops that value systems that is more in the pre-conscious, and then it extends into the conscious, yeah. Okay. So that is roughly the structure of the mind, if you like, how the ego, superego, the personality, if you like, structures work with the levels of consciousness. And anybody, any questions, anything you want to check or clarify so far?
Not from me, sir.
Swen Yin, go on. I can't hear you.
Not from me, sir.
Okay. Now, in the process of serving the three masters, yeah, the ego serves the three masters. Yeah. Ego has some tools it deploys. Yeah. Ego has to, if you like, use what is referred to as psychological defense mechanism. Sometimes, yeah, to cope with the demands of it. Yeah. Okay. Now, what this means is that the ego has to find ways, yeah, and you're not even conscious that you are doing it. That's what psychological defense mechanisms are about. Yeah. Okay. You're not conscious, you're not aware. It is done, yeah, in the mostly unconscious. It's the ego deploys the psychological defense mechanisms before you become aware of what's happening. Yeah. So it is not in the conscious level. Okay. Now, what happens to the psychological defense mechanisms? I will go through some of the popular ones a bit later. But the important thing is that the ego has to spend energy as it deploys the defense mechanisms. Yeah. If you like, yeah, say, for instance, one such defense mechanism is repression. Yeah. To repress something. Say, for instance, it makes a demand, yeah, and the demand is not acceptable as far as the superego is concerned, yeah, no way, yeah, you can't even entertain that thought, yeah, okay. Now, it is already repressed, yeah, even before that thought comes to your conscious self, yeah. That is repressed, and the ego has to spend energy, yeah, that it actually draws from it, yeah, onto itself. It has to now use that and some of that energy to repress, yeah, certain thoughts, yeah, certain desires or wishes, if you like, yeah, urges. It has to repress it. So it puts a lid on that demand. It doesn't go away. Yeah. The fact that ego has, that desire or that need for gratification, it doesn't disappear, but the ego actually puts a lid on and keeps it repressed. Yeah. So it's spending a lot of its energy that it draws from it to keep the urges or the desires under lid. Keep it, tightly shut down. Yeah. So what happens is that if you were to be doing too much of that repression, yeah, okay, because of your unique situation, your superego, your reality, yeah, and the way you're brought up. If you're doing a lot of that repressing, which you're not aware of, and you don't do it consciously, yeah, okay, this is according to the theory that is, yeah. What will happen is that you will lose a lot more access to the ego, if you like, will lose a lot more access to its own areas. Yeah. Okay, so more and more space of ego will be actually no-go area. Yeah. So these areas cannot come into your conscious self. Yeah. So what happens is that when the repressing is done to a certain extent, or to such an extent, where you can flip. Yeah. This is where people used to do. We used to get movies about split personalities, multiple personalities, and stuff like that. Yeah, this is where the source of it is. Yeah, this is where it comes from. Yeah, theoretically. Yeah. Now, the other way of doing it is that ego will use dream, yeah, as a way of presenting to it that the demand or the desire, the wish was gratified. Yeah. So we will look a little bit about dream and what those things are about, yeah, in a moment. Yeah. Okay. Now here we have different types of anxiety. So when ego has problem with it, yeah, and the tension is such that there is anxiety, and normally the Freudians will refer to it as neurotic anxiety. Yeah, or so and so is neurotic. We'll hear the word neurotic being used. Yeah, okay. In theoretical terms, it is anxiety that comes about because of the conflict between it and ego. Yeah, ego is having problem coping with the demands of it. That's where you have neurotic anxiety. Moral anxiety, as it suggests, ego has got problem with superego. Yeah. And the other one is when ego has problem with reality, we say it's realistic anxiety. Okay. So you sometimes, uh, when we look at emotion, we'll discuss some of those again, I'm sure. Now, the central theme of this theory is that the child is born, yeah, with what is known as libido or sexual energy. Yeah. Okay. Freudian theory talked about sexual energy. We call it libido. Yeah. Okay. Libido is a biologically guided. Yeah. It is biologically guided to certain locations in the body called the erogenous or erotogenous zones as the child grows. Yeah. Now, I suppose what Freud was trying to do was to link the physical development and the sensations the child has, yeah, with his theory, yeah, about pleasure and about the evolving or changing zones of, sensations in the child. Yeah. Okay, but we will discuss that in a moment again. Now, sexual energy refers simply to the ability to experience pleasure. Yeah. And it's a very loose, very broad term. Yeah. When we use sexual energy here. Yeah. Successful movement from stage to stage requires that the child receives the proper amount of physical pleasure from each erogenous zone. Yeah. Okay. Freud's theory suggests experience during childhood psychosexual stages has a bearing on the child's personality formation. Now, it's important here, you see, Freud was perhaps the early, yeah, theorist to actually emphasize childhood as important or as having a bearing, yeah, in our adult behaviors or having a link or influencing their childhood experiences as a way of influencing our later behavior, um, which was quite revolutionary at that time. That was Freud was the early one to push that idea that childhood experiences matter, yeah, and it's very important. Yeah. And today nobody argues with that. Yeah. Okay. If a child's experience during the stage are not what they should be, some portion of the libido remains partially fixated in that erogenous zone or erotogenous zone. Yeah. So now we'll look at the stages in a second. Yeah. We also have what we call psychic energy or cathexis. Yeah. When we talk about Freudian kind of theories, you'll always, have to know this. Yeah. Freud postulates a psychic energy analogous or similar to physical energy. Yeah. The amount of psychic energy directed towards memories, thoughts, and fantasies of an object is called cathexis. So if we attach or if emotion becomes linked to certain thoughts, yeah, certain ideas or certain objects, yeah, it becomes a cathexis. Yeah. Okay, like for instance, child's mother is an object highly connected with psychic energy. Yeah, because the bonding and all that, and so there's a lot of energy the child will, if you like, get attached to the mother. Yeah. So we do this to all sorts of things. Yeah, certain thoughts will get your system to respond, or you'll become anxious about certain thoughts. Yeah. Okay. It's what we call cathexis, yeah, where energy is attached to certain objects or thoughts. Yeah, in Freudian terms, anyway. Um, okay. Two forms of drive energy. Yeah, almost like yin and yang. Yeah. Here we have what we call, I've already mentioned, libido, sexual or erotic kind of energy. The other one is thanatos. Thanatos sometimes referred to as death instinct. Yeah. Okay, it is aggressive or destructive energy. Yeah. The thing is, Freud assumes, yeah, these are always fused, but not necessarily in the same amounts. Yeah. He sometimes says, for instance, cruelty can go with erotic kind of component. So you have, erotic kind of what you call a pleasure, but they can also, in some individuals, some element of cruelty with it, or love with aggression. Yeah. Okay. Some, what I simply call screwed up people, will have these problems, but mostly you don't. Now, these are the stages of sexual development. Um, 5 stages, yeah. Notice Freud stages, if you like, they end at puberty almost, yeah. He doesn't, if you like, he developed his theory throughout the lifespan, yeah. They are just up to puberty, yeah. Oral, anal, phallic, latency, and genital stage, yeah. Uh, and the period of the ages next to it. Okay, let's just take you through each of them. Oral stage is the first stage. It's from birth to about 18 months, yeah. And the erotogenic zone is the mouth, yeah, because it's, well, I suppose, common sense even, yeah. The baby, the infant will put everything in the mouth, will experience the environment through the sensation in the mouth, yeah, in that oral region, yeah. So it becomes the pleasure that the baby gets is in that part, yeah. Okay, so that is the oral, what they call a stage, yeah. And after about 18 months, it goes to anal stage. The development of the physical development of the child is such that the child is now able to control bowel movement, and toilet training is done and all that. And the child starts to, say, no, I don't want to go there, or, will hold, bowel movement, will withhold bowel movement and stuff like that. Yeah. Okay. So they have a sense of influence as well. It's, saying, no, I can do this, I won't do that. Yeah. Okay. So the first experience with discipline and authority, yeah, for the infant, really, basically. Yeah. So the anal stage is important, period. Yeah. The toilet training period, how it's handled, how issues are resolved in that stage, yeah, matters. Do read around it a little bit if you can. Yeah. The phallic stage is 3 to 6 years. Yeah. The focus is on genitals, sexual urges, arouses, curiosity. Here we have Oedipus complex. Notice, we were talking earlier about superego and stuff like that. Yeah. And yes, your physical sensations, you're noticing it's changed, it's different, yeah. And at the same time, your relationship, yeah, with your parents, this is according to Freud, yeah, is also important, yeah. And the relationship with the mother is seen as the competition with the father, yeah, for the affection. Yeah. Okay, that is the part where it's referred to as Oedipus complex. Yeah. Okay, and for the females that's called Electra complex. Yeah, but these are theories. Yeah, but you can go back to Greek kind of mythology, what happened with Oedipus and stuff like that. If you read around it a little bit, it's very interesting story. Yeah, it's basically how the son ends up marrying the mother. Yeah, in the Greek mythology. Um, but it's a long story. Yeah. So here you have repression, identification, and gender identity. Yeah. This period, around 6 years onwards. Yeah. There will be more repression because of your physical sensation and your sense of the sexual kind of developments, yeah, will sometimes lead to repression. But certainly identity is important. Yeah, the notion of who you are and stuff like that. But we will, of course, look at this when we look at Erikson as well. Yeah, but Freud doesn't develop it in a great way because Freud was more involved or more preoccupied with the psychological and the unconscious. But Erikson developed the more social side of identification. Yeah, and certainly gender, how we, develop our sense of who we are. But that's another interesting area. Now we have hundreds of genders, don't we? we'll talk about that when we deal with sexuality. Okay, so this period is important. Yeah, the Phallic stage is an important stage. Yeah, a lot of repression can take place during this stage. A sense of identification, who you identify with, mother, father, and those things will also change along the way. Yeah, so it's a very important period. Now, after that period, because you're now talking about coming into puberty, yeah, you are basically about school, about socializing, about learning. The sexual urges are more or less dormant. They're more repressed, they're dormant. Yeah, emphasis is on learning, education, the beginnings of concerns for others. We become more social. Yeah. Okay, there's this latency period where there is a break, if you like, in the not turmoil, but in the busy, resolving conflict kind of stages in the first three stages. That's right. Strong conflict can fixate an individual at stages 1, 2, and 3. Yeah. Okay. So it's important that I suppose in terms of Freudian theory, sometimes in terms of psychoanalysis and all that, they may even go back to those stages, yeah, to work through some issues. Yeah. The genital stage, yeah, puberty on, yeah, is when we start feeling sexual kind of feelings towards usually the opposite sex, but not always, yeah, for most people, depending on how the other stages were resolved, yeah, it'll be usually the opposite sex, yeah, okay. But herein lies some of the messy bit about people's sexuality, their orientation, what gets them going and all that. But there is also a lot of other factors that has a bearing on the social aspects of it. So we'll discuss it when we do sexuality. Now, the defense mechanisms. I said to you earlier that defense mechanisms are deployed by ego. Yeah, it's usually about how ego copes or a means that ego has to cope with the demands of it. Yeah. Okay, so ego, whenever it deploys a defense mechanism, it has to spend energy. Yeah. Okay, it has to spend energy to put a lid on it. Yeah. So repression, as I already said earlier, yeah, any wish, a desire, or a thought even, which is unacceptable to your conscious self, will be repressed even before it gets there. There's a lot of taboo thoughts in our society. Yeah, doesn't matter. All societies will have a degree of no kind of areas. Yeah, you cannot think this or cannot do that. Not allowed. Yeah, culturally. So those things will be repressed way before it comes to your conscious self. Like I said, when the repression is done, you're not aware. Yeah. But sometimes people will use words like suppression. Suppression is not a defense mechanism. We can, for instance, I have a thought and I say, I don't like that thing. That is suppression. That is not repression. Yeah. So I can push it to the back of my mind, ignore it. Yeah. That is suppression. Yeah. That is not a defense mechanism because I am conscious of, I'm aware of what I'm doing. Yeah. And eventually I might even forget about it. Yeah. But that is not repression. And those thoughts also don't disturb me, yeah, emotionally. Yeah. Okay. So repression, when the thoughts are revealed to you, you will be quite disturbed. Yeah. It's not compatible. Yeah. Those wishes or desires to your conscious self. That's why it's repressed. Yeah. Okay. So repression is a very important defense mechanism. The most significant defense mechanism because it is used in other parts of the theory to explain their behavior. Yeah. Okay, so repression is the most important mechanism or defense mechanism deployed by ego. Now, reaction formation is a defense mechanism. I'll give you an example. Say, for instance, somebody is fascinated by cruelty to animals. Yeah. Okay. But what they will do, because that's not unacceptable to your the desire, the urge is to do cruelty to animals. But because that is not acceptable to your conscious self in our current kind of social context, you will go out and campaign, yeah, against cruelty to animals. Yeah. Okay. So that is what we call reaction formation. When an individual is acting against the fascination they have, yeah, and they recognize, well, they cannot allow it to their conscious self, but the defense mechanism is deployed where the conscious self is working hard to promote, yeah, a self which is against that. Yeah. So somebody who's campaigning against cruelty to animals is actually, when you know, unpack things, maybe quite fascinating. Yeah. You know, about that behavior. Yeah. Okay. But this, you know, there are many different ways in which reaction formation comes into play. Yeah. But it's about acting against a desire or a wish we have. Yeah. Okay. And it looks very reasonable, very acceptable. Yeah. Okay. That's the key to it. Yeah. Sublimation is, I suppose, what we do. We should I put this? Say for instance, um, in an unconscious way, we may go home and kick the cat. Now, that would be displacement. Sublimation is when we do social activity like sports. Yeah, the sexual energy is channeled into social activity. Yeah, we can play rugby, we can play football, we can play hockey, we can play basketball. Yeah, the energy is spent through, you know, social kind of channels. Yeah, so it is sexual energy, yeah, being channeled into constructive social activity. Yeah. Regression is going back to an earlier stage where you were comfortable. Yeah. Say, for instance, when things are, you know, extremely um, overwhelming, yeah, the person will resort to coping, yeah, ways that they were used to when they were comfortable. It might be, for instance, withdrawing. It might be, you know, using ways of comforting themselves. Yeah, whatever they used to do. So they're going back to a stage earlier. The extreme form will be when somebody is curled up with their thumb in the mouth. Yeah, that would be an extreme form of regression. Yeah, they can't cope with the present situation. They put the thumb in the mouth and they curl up idly. Yeah, that is an extreme form. Yeah, displacement is what I was about to say earlier, where you kick a cat or whatever because you can't deal with the actual source of the problem. Yeah, you come home after work, the cat gets a kick. Yeah, so you are taking the target is something other than what it should be. But because this target cannot respond, it has to get the, you know, projection is interesting because it is something that we project onto others that we don't like in ourselves. Yeah. Okay. We project, yeah, something onto other people that we don't like in ourselves, but we are not aware that that's the case. Yeah. Okay. Sometimes we will call people, you're so stupid, whatever we say about other people. Yeah. It's really something that we don't want in ourselves. Yeah. Okay. That's projection. Rationalization is simply explaining things away which is not explainable. Doesn't make sense, but you are rationalizing. You're just, you know, explaining it away. But that is not the actual narrative. The narrative is completely away from the source of the problem, if you like. You are just explaining away certain behaviors. Yeah. Usually we see this in a lot of alcoholics. Yeah. People who are very difficult and protracted problems. Yeah. They will just rationalize away. But that's what they do. But they're not even aware of it most of the time. But it serves the purpose. Yeah. In terms of how their psychological state and how they cope. Now, there is a lot more defense mechanisms, but the important one is repression in the theory. Yeah, okay. We might recognize bits of it in our behavior sometimes, but we won't know that's what they're doing. They're after that. Yeah. Okay. Now, the Freudian's therapy. Yeah. So they have a view of childhood experiences, psychosexual development, and the energies, and they understand the cathexis and the sorts of things become important, yeah, and how we respond. But certainly the ego and how the ego copes with the demands of it and how that affects behavior. And as adult, the type of personality we are, all that is brought into what we call psychoanalysis. Yeah. Okay. Those theoretical themes, if you like, yeah, in the theory will be explored. Yeah. So besides being the theory of personality, it is also a method of psychotherapy, yeah, a technique for helping individuals who are experiencing, emotional or mental disorders or even relatively minor problems with living. Yeah. A lot of the Freudians, made a lot of their living. Well, I suppose I shouldn't be too cynical about them, but the important thing is that they were the early talking therapists. Yeah. Okay, they were the very early talking therapists, and they were the early, if you like, theoretically grounded folks who brought therapy, yeah, to the general public. Yeah. Okay. And so psychiatry in the early days, when they had people in asylums and all that, yeah, it started to get a little bit better for the professionals who were in that field because they were now seeing a way of doing therapy with people who have mental health issues. But it's very complicated. But it's important that the Freudians were the initiators of talking therapies. So you can see Freudian started the emphasis on childhood experiences. Yeah, they talked about the unconscious, the forces that are within us, yeah, which are important. Yeah. And they also talked about or introduced the idea that we can help people. We can actually reconstruct. That's what it is really. Take the person back and reconstruct and help them, regain the self, if you like, a bit better. Yeah. And heal. Now, psychoanalysts, like I mentioned, it can be thought of as a process of reconstruction. Yeah. And Freud actually developed the theory, yeah, while practicing with clients. Yeah. Now, the important thing is that the dream analysis is important. Yeah. As far as Freudians are concerned. Yeah. They used, yeah, several techniques. Yeah. Free association. Yeah. Free association was an important technique they used. Yeah. Basically, they got people to relax on the couch. So the Freudian couch. Yeah. People just sat, and the therapist sat behind a little bit. Yeah. He wasn't sat in front of you. He was sat to the side, a bit behind. Yeah. And it got you to relax, and he got you to suspend all your senses, if you like. Yeah, the kind of if you like, censorship we put. So you will say things like, for instance, father, say whatever comes to mind. Yeah. Okay. So when he says father, you're supposed to say anything that comes to mind. Yeah. So that was the technique of free association. So whatever word he throws out, you say what comes to mind. Yeah. Without censoring, without filtering anything. Yeah. But it takes time for people to do that. When they start doing that, he starts to get, well, the therapist starts to get more access to the unconscious. Yeah. But dream analysis was also another technique they used because you see, when, according to the Freudians, when you go to sleep, your level of consciousness drops. Yeah. Remember earlier I was saying the ego uses a lot of the energy to repress the demands or the wishes of it. Yeah. Okay. So the ego spends energy to repress. But if you are sleeping, your consciousness is dropping, the ego can, nature being such that it will want to conserve energy. Yeah. So as you're sleeping, it will withdraw some energy. But the urge or the desire will be presented as gratified through dream work. Yeah. So what happens is that the dream work constructs, yeah, a certain, if you like, narrative. Yeah. And that urge becomes or presented to it as gratified. Yeah. So it's a virtual thing, if you like. It is not in reality, it is a virtual thing, but it's presented to it as gratified. So when you wake up, yeah, you won't know much about it to your conscious self. Yeah. It's a bit like, I don't know, the analogy I think sometimes, if you are by the seaside, yeah, it's high tide, it looks lovely, beautiful sunset and all that. Yeah. But as the tide goes down, you see stuff protruding through the water. Yeah. And they're not so nice anymore. Yeah. These are things that are starting to appear. It's a similar thing. Yeah. As an analogy, as our level of consciousness drops, yeah, the energy is withdrawn. Ego withdraws the energy. You have to conserve. And what happens is that the dream process, the dream work takes over, and the urges are presented as satisfied or gratified. Now, when you get to dream, for instance, you have a, sort of a beginning, a middle, and an end. Yeah, those dreams are easily explainable. Yeah, you can think in terms of what you did yesterday or the day before. It'll make sense. Yeah, but the dreams that are important are the ones that you can't make sense. Yeah, you get some bits and pieces, but hey, you don't know what it was about, yeah, and you can't even work it out. Yeah. So those kind of uh, dreams are what the Freudians will want to work on, to unearth what was some of the message, the themes, yeah, underlying the dream process, if you like. Okay, look, any questions, folks? Now, I mentioned free association earlier. It is important. Yeah, that is one of their big techniques that they use. Yeah, and I tell you what, sometimes we know many instances of people will have therapy, yeah, Freudian psychoanalysis for 20, 30 years or more. Yeah, they will just go, say, talk, and the therapist may not say anything to them, yeah, for 15, 20 years. Yeah, okay, but it's changed now because of the context is very different. Yeah. They also have what they call brief psychoanalysis because you see the cognitive behavioral people, they do 12 sessions, 15 sessions, it's all wrapped up. So these people have to respond. It's the market. And so um, Freudian, there's still people who earn a living with psychoanalysis. It's still available for people. Yeah. Some people, some individuals prefer it. Uh, I moved away from it very long time. I'm a cognitive behavioral psychotherapist because I want more evidence-based kind of interventions. Yeah. But this is still available, yeah, for people. Yeah. So here, like I mentioned earlier, the patients relax and sit back and let their mind wander. Yeah. And the idea is to stop the senses working, yeah, to minimize the filtering. Yeah. So you get some access, yeah, to the unconscious. But the royal road, as they say, to the unconscious is through dream. Of course, clients will need some practice, and after a little while, they'll do that quite okay. Yeah. So dream analysis is what the Freudians do quite a bit. Okay. Any thoughts? Anything you folks want to ask? Let me what do you call it? Stop share, and you can switch on your cameras and you can ask whatever you want. Any questions?
No question from me.
Hamza, no question. Hey, have you encountered Freudian ideas before? Anybody? Anybody? You know, you're familiar with Freudian kind of theory? Anybody familiar with it? Did you do some course somewhere, or you know, you've come across it in your any other programs that you've done? No. My suggestion for you is that while we've just discussed it, engage it a little bit. Yeah. What I'm saying to you is important. You understand the bits that I've covered. Yeah. So you need to know. So you cannot say, for instance, 2 weeks time, what was all that about? No, I cannot afford you to do that. Well, you cannot afford to do that. Yeah. You must understand the major concept, the relationship between ego, superego, what deploys the defense mechanisms. Yeah. Okay. So you need to know some of the key things, and certainly the relationship between ego and superego. Okay. Listen. Any other thoughts? Any other questions from you? I'm quite happy to, you know, respond to your questions. No. No questions. Wow. Either I've done such a good job, or you haven't a clue what I'm talking about. Okay. Look, I'm happy to leave things there, but you will have another opportunity when we have our tutorial. Yeah. So do some work, read around it a bit. Yeah. And especially you need to know what the parameters are, because it's a huge area. That's why I kind of, you know, define the area for you. This is all I want you to look at and be familiar with. Okay. And during the tutorials, we can, you know, talk you through. Yeah. But the important thing is I need you to talk and engage, because otherwise, sometimes when you're not engaged or haven't discussed it, when you say, when you're doing responding to our questions, yeah, in your exam, it doesn't make sense. Yeah. Okay, sometimes. Yeah. So it's better to clarify before you write things. Okay, listen, I'm conscious of the time. Let's leave things there for now. Yeah, we'll take it up when we do our tutorial. Can we have, I don't know, 5 minutes break, and then we will do what they call Erikson. Yeah, Erikson is a follower of Freud. Yeah, but he emphasized the psychosocial development. Yeah, he didn't spend a lot of time looking at the unconscious, yeah, or the psychological. He was looking at more the social development of the child. Okay, we will come back together and say, can we say 10 past 5? Yeah. Can I? Sorry, 10 past. What time is it now?
10 past 3 for here, sir.
Yes. Yeah, 10 past 3. Okay. We'll get back together at 3:10. We can use the same link. Yeah.
All right, sure, sir.
Okay. Thanks. See you in a moment. And Erickson, yeah, was basically a follower of Freud. Yeah. He accepted Freudian theories. Yeah. Well, just about everybody in those days accepted Freudian theory. Nobody actually critiqued it in any serious way until very recently. Yeah. But the important thing is that Erickson started to promote the social development of the child. Yeah. Okay. He certainly emphasized in his theories the social aspect of development. Yeah. So what we will do, he's also another of these stage theory, if you like, yeah, of development. Yeah. So the development takes place in stages. Yeah. Okay. And but his theory, the stages go throughout life. Yeah. Erickson's stages don't stop, around teenage years or anything like that. These social aspect, the important social changes that takes place as people grow from infant to old age. Yeah, and he traced those and he theorized about them. Okay, so we will I'll take you through the stages here, 8 stages, and some of the important ideas that Erickson was emphasizing. And nobody actually, well, most people accepted Erickson's psychosocial developmental theory without too much problem. Okay, so I'll get the slide out and what do you call it? I'll do the screen share first, I think, and then I'll get the slide out. Again, please, yeah, do interrupt and do what do you call it? Ask if you're not sure. Let me get the PowerPoint. Okay, Erickson, he was born in 1902 and he died in 1994. Yeah, so I got involved in psychology and mental health work. Yeah, around 1970s. Yeah, and he was certainly one of the people that we used to discuss in our classes and things. Yeah, but certainly by the time I started my kind of involvement in mental health work, my background is in psychotherapy work. Yeah, I do cognitive behavioral psychotherapy, but I've always done mental health work, if you like, all through my career. Yeah, and then I also was teaching, and I did the behavioral sciences teaching, and I did therapy work. But certainly, people like Erickson, yeah, was very useful in introducing the more important, more accessible parts of our behavior, if you like. This is what we can see, we can observe. Yeah. He didn't go into, or he didn't, though he accepted Freudian ideas of forces in the unconscious and deep down and stuff like that, he didn't emphasize it in his theory, yeah, which was interesting. Now, Erickson's psychosocial theory of personality development is well accepted. Yeah, we will review the 8 stages of development, each with a unique crisis for psychosocial growth. Simply, each stage has its important, if you like, resolution. Yeah, the conflict must be resolved. Yeah, in a way that is functional for the individual. Yeah. He again he used the word ego. Yeah, he accepted Freudian ideas. Yeah, so he used the word ego to actually talk about the self. Yeah, at that time. Yeah, in his, well, I suppose he was a Freudian, but because around what do you call the 40s and 50s, we have had better theories about self than ego. But Erickson, being a Freudian, he invoked and used the concept of ego in his theory. I think he could have done better than that. But anyway, that's what we have now. Erickson proposed that personality development is determined by the interaction of internal maturational plan and external societal demand. So he's now talking about, yeah, there is a maturational issue. Yeah, we develop physically, yeah, and things will unfold, yeah, from a physical point of view. But there is also external societal demand, yeah, depending on culture and the kind of environment we are in. Yeah. We can't argue with that. Erickson and the ego. Yeah, Erickson emphasized the ego as a powerful, independent part of the personality. Yeah. Because you see, Erickson talked about identity a lot. Yeah. So he sees ego as an important source of that formation of one's identity. Yeah. In addition, the ego was involved in mastering the environment, achieving one's goal, and hence establishing one's identity. Yeah. Now, the important thing about, I'm just going to expand this a little bit about identity, is that it's about the concept of self. Yeah. What do we mean by that when we talk about the self? Yeah. We will talk about it, I'm sure, throughout my sessions with you. Yeah. The notion of self. Yeah. What is it? Yeah. When we talk about the self, what are we talking about? Yeah. There are many different components to it. Yeah. We talk about, I suppose, from a symbolic interactionist perspective, we talk about the I and the me. Yeah. The me is all the different roles we play. You are a student, I'm a lecturer in the present moment. But in another context, you'll be a brother or mother or sister or whatever. And you play different roles. Yeah. Okay. So whenever we talk about the self, we really talk about the me, the roles that I play. The I is the subjective experience we have. We take to all the, it's continuous. If you like, we take it with us. But it is the moment you start looking at the I, you can only look, talk about the different roles you play. Yeah. Now the interesting thing is that our understanding of ourselves is really influenced by how we experience other people's responses towards us. Yeah, it's what we call the looking glass self. It was a fellow called Charles Cooley. He was talking about our understanding of ourselves, who we are, is a reflection of how other people perceive us and respond to us. Yeah. Okay. So that's how we develop a sense of who we are. Yeah. So all the different roles we play, and the more roles you play, the better for you. Yeah. In terms of how you construct this self. This self isn't given. Yeah. We're not born with it. Yeah. We construct it. Yeah. And Erickson is basically saying how it's constructed matters. Yeah. And it happens in this way through the different stages. And we have to, resolve different issues in different stages to be functioning and to be, if you like, a healthy person. Yeah. But the important thing is that the notion of self, we normally talk about things like me, I. That's what the symbolic interactionists talk about. And they did it through study of child socializations. Yeah. Okay. But other people talk also include things like self-concept, self-esteem, body image, and all that. They all matter. Yeah. In how we see ourselves. We normally view ourselves as a whole. Yeah. We don't see ourselves in bits. Yeah. But certainly, when we talk about self-esteem and things like that, we will discuss it further. There's plenty of important things for us to clarify. But anyway, let me just, the identity is about, yeah, who you think you are, and the fact that it is only developed through socialization, through other people's responses. Yeah, your understanding of yourself, yeah, is constructed by that social interaction, if you like. That's interesting, isn't it? So, what is this identity? Yeah, is it how though it seems constant and we, kind of can be very comfortable with our sense of who we are, yeah, but it's a constructed thing. Okay, so it can be Erickson's work can be sometimes some people refer to it as ego psychology. Yeah. So Erickson's theory basically emphasizes this notion of establishing a secure identity. Yeah, and that is seen as the primary function of ego. Yeah. Erickson sees the ego as important in this process of uh, establishing a secure identity. Yeah. So identity can be thought of as an innocence of who we are and what makes us unique, and a sense of continuity and a feeling of wholeness. Yeah. Other people will talk of in terms of self. Yeah. But the from a cultural social point of view, we do identify, yeah, with certain values, certain groups of people, and all that in our society. Yeah. Okay. And that informs who we are in some ways. Yeah. Like for instance, if you, I suppose, like they say, you can take somebody out of Malaysia, you cannot take Malaysia out of the person. Right? Yeah. So if you're in a different culture, your behavior, your attitudes, your values, even sometimes, yeah, may seem a little bit at odds with the host culture. Yeah. Okay. So we then socialize ourselves to adopt those ways that will help us fit in. Okay. So identity is a kind of not a fixed thing. Yeah. It evolves and changes, but it creates some sense of who we are. Yeah. In the moment. Yeah. But it doesn't change constantly, but it can evolve, yeah, over the years. Yeah. People, for instance, now your sense of who you are now in about 15 years time, yeah, your sense of who you are will be very different. Your identity, yeah, you might say will be very different as well. Yeah. Okay. And that's how it goes. Yeah. So Erickson, we talked about identity crisis as well, and of course we also have movies about midlife crisis. They draw from here. Yeah. So it refers to the desperation and sense of confusion. Yeah, when people have, a problem of identity. Yeah, and a person feels when he or she has not developed a strong sense of identity. Yeah, Erickson believed the notion of identity as an important developmental achievement, yeah, in everyone's personality. And that makes sense, yeah. To become, to be in a career and to develop your career, you have to have a sense of, comfortable feeling, knowing, and having a sense of, yeah, this is me. Yeah. Otherwise, you can't develop other parts of yourself so comfortable. But anyway, the psychosocial stages, he maintained that children develop in predetermined order. Yeah. But he didn't focus on the cognitive development. Piaget did, so we'll deal with it tomorrow when we look at Piaget's work. Yeah. But he was interested in how children socialize and how this affects their sense of self. Like I said earlier, the sense that what self is was actually explored in a great, interesting way by the symbolic interactionist theorists. Yeah. But Erickson was slowly moving towards that. Yeah. So he uses ego as a connection to, if you like, Freud and acknowledging them, but he was moving in the social, psychological, or psychosocial direction. Yeah. Okay. The sequence of stages in Erickson's theory, like I said earlier, it is fixed. Yeah, the stages, the sequential development is a predetermined thing, and it's based on what we call epigenetic principle. This simply means each psychosocial strand has its own special period of particular importance. So in each stage, a certain psychosocial strength is achieved, or sometimes it's referred to as virtue. Yeah. Okay. And that happens only in that stage, a certain virtue or certain psychosocial strength in that stage. Yeah. So the 8 stages, we'll just go through them a little bit to give you a flavor of what the stages are and what are the important issues, yeah, in each of the stages. Yeah. So Erickson proposed that each there's 8 distinct stages. Each stage involves a certain developmental task and optimum time. Yeah. Okay. So each stage has this developmental task. Yeah. And optimum time, and there's only 2 outcomes. Yeah. Whether you do that successfully or comfortably, or you don't do it well, or you fail to resolve the issues. Yeah, those are the 2 outcomes. Yeah. So if a stage is managed well, according to Erickson, you carry away a certain virtue or psychosocial strength. Yeah. So you resolve the stage well, you have a certain psychosocial strength that you develop, which will help through the rest of your stages, yeah, throughout one's lives. Yeah. Okay. So the psychosocial strength from one stage will be beneficial, yeah, in other stages, yeah, the subsequent stages. Now, the failure to successfully complete the stage, yeah, should you fail, you may develop maladaptations and malignancies, yeah, as well as endanger all our future development. Of course, if you don't successfully mediate a stage, it's going to have a knock-on effect on other stages. Yeah. So there are 2 types of problems. Yeah. When somebody fails to successfully complete the stage, one is maladaptation. The other one is malignancies. Malignancies are worse of the 2. Yeah. Say, for instance, in the first stage, yeah, we will look at in a moment. I'm using it as an example. The if you like, it's about trust. Yeah, it's about development of trust. In a malignancy, yeah, the trust is, if you like, not developed at all. Yeah. Well, in maladaptation, the trust is too much. Yeah. So in malignancy, you don't have trust. Yeah, no trust. So that's going to be a problem. How are you going to, engage and live with people? Yeah. But the maladaptation, you have too much trust. Yeah. We'll look at that stage now. Yeah. So trust versus mistrust. Yeah. This is birth to the first year. Yeah. Okay. Now, the children begin to learn the ability to trust others based on the consistency of their caregivers, if you like, how consistent they are with them. Yeah. If trust develops successfully, the child gains confidence and security in the world around him or her and is able to feel secure even when threatened. Yeah. Okay. Now, parents are never perfect. So sometimes they'll screw up some things, but the child is not so, because the trust is built. Yeah. The child doesn't mind that, can handle that problem. Yeah. Okay. But actually, children are very resilient. They can handle a lot of issues. I'm surprised, I'm amazed how some children can even be healthy given the way the parents behave. But the point is, the important thing is that the child learns to trust. Okay. But the child has to temper it with some mistrust. Children also learn to mistrust, because trust doesn't mean you will get always the things that you expect. Yeah. The proper balance of trust and mistrust infants can acquire hope, which is an openness to new experience, tempered by barriers that discomfort and danger may arise. Yeah. So it is, yeah, the trust is there, but there is also, it is tempered with some mistrust because realistically, yeah, things cannot, well, may not always go the way you want. Now, unsuccessful completion of this stage can result in an inability to trust and therefore a sense of fear about the inconsistent work. It may result in anxiety, heightened insecurity, and an overwhelming feeling of mistrust in the world around them. So this is a malignancy situation. They cannot trust. Yeah. Okay. So it is not a question of just developing trust, but you must have a balance, yeah, a right measure of trust and mistrust. Yeah. That's the key, yeah, for a successful resolution of that stage. That is more realistic. Yeah. Now, the next stage is 1 to age 3 years. Yeah. Children begin to assert their independence by walking away from their mother, picking which toy to play with, and making choices about what they like to wear, etc. Because they're basically toddlers, and they will do what toddlers do. They will explore their environment, stuff like that, and they become more confident and secure in their own ability, yeah, to explore and stuff like that. Yeah. Now, however, if children are criticized or overly controlled or not given the opportunity to be themselves, assert themselves, yeah, they begin to feel inadequate in their ability to survive, yeah, and may become overly dependent upon others. Yeah, they will lack self-esteem. I'll discuss that word self-esteem later, and feel a sense of shame or doubt in their own abilities. Um, because the carers are, or the parents are too critical and controlling. They don't have that sense of autonomy. Yeah. And so the balance between autonomy and shame and doubt. Yeah. I think, it's just nothing wrong with having some doubt, but the measure, yeah, is important. Yeah. It shouldn't be, too much of it. Yeah. But if you have a little bit of doubt, and it keeps you, if you like, a little bit more humble. If you like, yeah. So sometimes, too much sense of, hey, independent isn't so wonderful. So the task is to achieve a degree of autonomy while minimizing shame and guilt. Yeah. Okay. We want to learn how to be dependent on others. We also need to be independent. We support other people as well, but we should feel comfortable enough so that we don't feel too much doubt. Uh, 3 to 6 years of age, initiative versus guilt. Yeah, this one is preschool period. Child is just going to school, so children assert themselves more frequently. They begin to plan activities, make up games, and initiate activities with others. If given this opportunity, children develop a sense of initiative, feel secure in their ability to, engage and lead others and make decisions. Right? Okay. Conversely, if these tendencies inhibited either through criticism or control, children develop a sense of guilt. Yeah, they may feel like a nuisance to others and will therefore remain, in a sense, as followers, lacking in self-initiative. Yeah, a good balance leads to the psychosocial strength of purpose. A sense of purpose is something many people crave in their lives, and yet many do not realize that they themselves make their purpose through imagination and initiative. We have to create the sense of purpose. In therapy, we see a lot of people will question, what is it all about? What am I, and all that. Look, you create your own meaning. Yeah, that's what Erickson said. Yeah. Again, it has to be resolved in the right measure. Yeah. From age 6 to puberty, industry versus inferiority. Yeah. Children begin to develop a sense of pride in their accomplishment. Yeah, this is now the school years, yeah. And they initiate projects, see them through to completion, and feel good about what they have achieved. Yeah, during this time, teachers play an important and an increased role in the child's development. If children are encouraged and reinforced for their initiative, they begin to feel industrious and feel confident in their ability to achieve goals. Yeah. Now you can also, I'm sure, think in terms of the kind of subjects you did well within. Yeah. And you can also relate that to the teachers. The subjects that we like, we enjoy, we do well, usually is to do with, in the main, friendly, supportive teachers who reinforce our behaviors. Yeah, they're smiling, they're engaging you, they're working with you. Yeah, and we remember those teachers, but certainly we also do better in those subjects that those teachers were involved in. Yeah. So teachers are important at that stage in life. Yeah. If a child is allowed too little, or if too little success because of harsh teachers or rejecting peers, for example, yeah, then he or she will develop instead a sense of inferiority or incompetence. Yeah, this is a problem for some people. Yeah, well, when I say some people, a lot of people I work with, it is about those issues. Yeah, additional source of inferiority, of course, societal issues, where people live, the kind of problems they have in society, racism, sexism, and all sorts of other forms of discriminations matter. They tend to compound for these individuals, especially. Yeah, while others will overcome those things without too much trouble. Yeah. The right balance of industry and inferiority, that is mostly industry with just a touch of inferiority to keep us sensibly humble. Yes, I think that's important. Yeah, we don't want to feel, overconfident, but we have to have a sense of a little bit of inferiority. It's not a problem. Yeah, or feeling a little inferior is okay. But the virtue here is called competence, competency. Yeah, where we talk about industry versus inferiority. We become effective in our interpersonal relationship. Yeah. The task, identity and role versus role confusion. This is about adolescence, yeah, the adolescent years, yeah, teenage years. The task during adolescence is to achieve ego identity and avoid role confusion. Most of us go through that stage without too much issues, really. But for some individuals, it can be a problem, yeah, because of problems in earlier stages. Yeah. Ego identity means knowing who you are and how to fit into the rest of society. Yeah. The transition from childhood to adulthood, rites of passage is important. Yeah. Children are becoming more independent and begin to look at the future in terms of career, relationship, family, where they live, and all that kind of stuff by the time they are in their late teens. Okay. But this is an important period, and I'm sure a lot of you can remember the kind of issues that you had to deal with. Yeah. Role confusion, uncertainty about one's place in society and the world. It's a bit general, yeah, but there are more particular issues that when an adolescent is confronted by role confusion, Erickson says he or she is suffering from identity crisis. Yeah, when they don't know, what do I want? Yeah, when I grow up and stuff like that. Yeah. If you successfully negotiate this stage, you will have the virtue Erickson called fidelity, means simply loyalty, the ability to live by society's standards despite the imperfections and incompleteness and inconsistencies. Yeah, we don't have to agree, yeah, with everything that goes on around us, but we are comfortable. Yeah, we are even comfortable sometimes when we disagree with a lot of things around us. That's what we call fidelity. Yeah, okay, we are part of that society, even when we don't agree with some of the aspects of it. It's inconsistencies. Okay, so Erickson kind of emphasized these stage because a lot of his work was about these stage, the teenage years. Yeah. So the ego he saw as one of its important functions is about establishing the sense of who you are, identity. Intimacy versus isolation. This is young adulthood. This is probably where most of you are. Intimacy is the ability to be close to others as friends, lovers, as participants in society, in groups, in class, whatever. We begin to share ourselves more intimately with others. We explore relationships leading towards longer term commitments with some other than family members. Successful completion can lead to comfortable relationships and a sense of commitment, safety, and care within a relationship. The task is to achieve some degree of intimacy as opposed to remaining in isolation. This is an important period where we function socially in groups. We relate, we interact. And if we are not able to do that, if we are remaining isolated, you will have these individuals who are not so socially skilled or engaged can develop problems. That's sense of isolation. We'll discuss that along the way, no doubt. Avoiding intimacy, fearing commitment and relationship can lead to isolation, loneliness, sometimes depression, and problems like that. Certainly anxiety anyway. If you successfully negotiate this stage, you will carry with you for the rest of your life the virtue of psychosocial strength, Erickson called love, as in mutuality of devotion, that we work in a way that is beneficial. Okay. During middle adulthood, 30 to 60 is a very long period. We establish our careers, settle down within a relationship, within our own families, and develop a sense of being part of the bigger picture. We give back. Corny word, it's a funny word, I think, giving back to society through raising our children, being productive at work, and becoming involved in community activities and organizations. And people in this kind of age, they teach, they write, they can do interesting things. If they're into art, sciences, social activism, and generally contributing to the welfare of future generations to be generative as well. So it is good for the individuals concerned at this stage if they are able to function like that. So it's what we call generative. They are contributing, they are still learning and benefiting. This is the stage of midlife crisis. And again, like I said earlier, Erickson was big on crisis, and midlife crisis was one of the things that people make movies out of. What am I doing all these for? Because I think people in their 50s and late 40s, 50s, and 60s tend to have that question: Is this all there is in my life? And some will want to drastically change things, and they will act in ways that are, not in keeping with age, what's expected of them, and there's a lot of problems there for some individuals. By failing to achieve these objectives, we become stagnant and feel unproductive. But if you are successful at this stage, you will have a capacity for caring that will serve you through the rest of your life. Ego integrity versus despair, and old age. This is what it all kind of terminates here. The task is to develop ego integrity with a minimal amount of despair. We grow older and become senior citizens, and tend to slow down our productivity and explore life as a retired person. It is during this time that we contemplate our accomplishments and are able to develop integrity if we see ourselves as leading a successful life. Then there is a sense of biological uselessness. The body no longer does everything it used to. Yeah, I mean, this is women go through a dramatic menopause. Men find that they can no longer rise to the occasion or whatever. Then there are the illnesses, of course, of old age. Yeah, all that matters. Yeah, it has a bearing. Yeah, they come fear about things that one has never, been afraid of before. Things like flu, for example, or just falling down. These things matter now, yeah, for these people. Yeah. If we see our lives as unproductive, feel guilt about our past, or feel that we did not accomplish our life goals, yeah, we become dissatisfied with life and develop despair, often leading to, of course, unhelpful emotions like depression and sometimes feeling hopeless as well. Yeah, someone who approaches death without fear has the strength Erickson calls wisdom. He calls it a gift to children because healthy children will not fear life if the elders have integrity enough not to fear death. Yeah. So if the older people, yeah, are not fearful of death, younger people will live their lives without too much fear. That's the idea uh, of this wisdom anyway. Yeah. So Erickson basically staged, the psychosocial development through the actual throughout the whole life. Yeah. Um, Again, Erickson's ideas people can engage with, yeah, and they can supplement, add to. Yeah, there is no great, if you like, areas where we cannot relate to. Yeah, we can test it, we can check it, we can talk about it, and we all can share what we experienced during those stages. Yeah. So it is accessible to conscious self, but Erickson never invoked the unconscious in his theory. That's the key. Yeah. He stuck with the psychosocial development. Okay, look, I've been talking a lot. Any questions? Anything you want to check or ask or